don't want to sleep on the, you know.
I'll get it.
Minute and a half to go.
Yep.
Lights are green, say what you mean.
All cell phones, please, extinguish.
And return your seats to the upright position.
Upright.
Return your tray tables. We'll be launching soon.
Hold on, put safety belts on and get ready and pray.
That we shall.
I don't think we have a special guest to lead us in prayer. Did anybody want to do that tonight?
Keith.
I can if nobody else wants to.
Voluntold? Are you
Don't
cool with
stand
that?
up with your shorts on, please.
That's what people like to see.
Make the rest of us look bad.
If it makes you feel better, I wore flat sandals today.
It feels good. It feels good.
God, it's still burning up, ain't it? Still hot. Boy, we need rain.
We do need lots of rain, yes.
Boy.
Could use.
And it seems like it's just mostly East Texas. North Louisiana's getting rain, and Alexandria and all
I
that.
saw that. They're getting a lot of
Mississippi,
rain.
but not us. It just goes around.
The day we got rain, it turned it into like a bread proofer. It's just steam.
All right,
Yeah.
10 seconds. Let's get ready to govern.
Get ready to govern.
Farmers market.
I'll now call to order this meeting of the City of White House Council for this evening, Tuesday, August 2nd, 2022. It's 6 p.m. Ms. Hargis, will you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. James Wansley.
Here.
Zach Briscoe.
Here.
Georgia Harris.
Here.
John Chambers.
Here,
Michael Lowe.
Here.
And Heath Rosenstein.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Will you please stand if you're able and join Councilman Rosenstein in a word of prayer?
Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for this opportunity to meet and to go over the things that are pressing. We pray for your wisdom. We pray that we're able to step towards the right direction, that you lead us in that as a body. We pray for our citizens, that you are providing for their needs, that you help them with what needs to be helped with. We desperately pray for some rain in our area, and we thank you for providing for our health, our food, and our money. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. All right, thank you. Please be seated. And that takes us into section D, presentation. We have none. That takes us to item E, community interest. Any matters of community interest?
Mayor and council, first off, just to let you know, if you haven't heard, Deputy Bustos' funeral will be Friday at Green Acres Baptist Church.
Okay.
And we have lowered our flags here in the city to half staff, out of respect for him and his family. On a little bit lighter note, first day of school is August 17th. Meet the Cats will be Monday, August 15th. And the EDC this evening held a very well-attended after-hours event with the Tyler Area Builders Association. So it's a great turnout. We, for the short time Susan and I were there, we were able to meet some great people and some builders and talk about some properties that we have available in my house. It was really successful.
Nice.
If I can add, the EDC will be hosting the September meeting as well for TABA here at Jasper Ventures on the 6th.
Kind of excited to show off
September.
our
Okay.
community to some of those that may not be aware of the things that we have here. So
Yeah, I was able to drop by just in time to hear former Mayor Charles Parker talk about the options here and the opportunities here in White House, and it was a great reception and a lot of applause. So appreciate you getting out there for that. All right, any more items under the matter of community interest? All right, we are accepting prayers for rain. I'll throw that out there as a matter of
That's
community
true.
interest.
Yes.
Public forum, I see that no one signed up for public forum, is that correct, Ms. Hargis?
that's correct.
All right, so that takes us down into consent agenda. There's only one item on the consent agenda for consideration, and that is the minutes of the previous meeting. Now, held not too long ago on July the 26th. So, as that's the only item on the agenda, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
All right. Any further discussion or any corrections to be made to the minutes? All right, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. All right, with that, the consent agenda passes. And that takes us down into item H, other action items, ordinances, resolutions, and public hearings. And number one is discussion of the fiscal year 2022-23 budget and the tax rate.
Mayor and council, first off, I want to start by apologizing to you. We received our tax rate calculation worksheet at about 5:05 this afternoon from the Smith County Tax Office. So I'd hoped that we would be much further along than we are today. We will need to end this discussion with a proposed tax rate. So I'm gonna do my best to walk you through what we have, and I'll give you my recommendation after we do that. Let's go through some of this. So I'm not gonna go back over the budget calendar. You all have seen what we have done up to this point. I will just make another note that we will hold our public hearing and adoption of both the tax rate and the budget on August 16th. We will not meet next Tuesday, August 9th, and we'll meet the 16th instead. And then we will begin implementation of this budget on October 1. So this is kind of like your next to last look at the budget and tax rate before we adopt at our next meeting.
And on that August 16th meeting, we'll need full attendance.
Yes,
On the,
so there's
the which one?
August 16th.
You know I'm not gonna be here on that date.
Does everybody
We had
have to be
discussed this.
here?
I'll have to go back and look at the statutes. I think we can have one missing, but I've gotta have, it requires a supermajority when you're passing tax rates and budgets, so
Can it be a special election? Could we choose another date?
let me go back and look at this. We have to publish whenever we're gonna hold this hearing tomorrow,
Okay.
so let me look and see what we need to do. Alright, so again, we were focusing on three areas that are identified in our city's mission statement, which are safe, connected, and engaged. So a couple of things for safety, recommending our increases to public safety staffing and compensation, because of the issues we're facing with recruiting and retention, and improvements to the 110 North Water Plant. These projects that we're gonna talk about tonight are not reflected in the line item budget tonight. They will be in the next when you adopt. So if you have any issues, concerns, things you wanna see removed, let's talk about those tonight so that we can make sure we truly are ready to adopt at the next meeting. Connected, as you know, our broadband study is ongoing, and one of the things we've talked about is the development of a Parks and Trails plan that will allow for future trail development and enhance the city's opportunities to receive grants and donations for the development of recreation amenities. And again, engagement with the CIP committee, the work on 109 East Main, which we're gonna talk about a little bit later in tonight's meeting. The city covering the cost of credit card processing fees for utility payments, and then the development and updating of the city's 2018 strategic plan. We went into this budget process with three financial goals: reducing the property tax burden over time for our property owners, reducing the reliance on the utility fund through what's called the pilot, or the payment in lieu of taxes, and looking for ways that we can move toward fully funding the EDC. I think we'll meet two of those three goals in this fiscal year. We're doing that through strategic planning, through our capital improvements, facilities, staffing and compensation, and of course broadband that we've been talking about. I won't go back over these numbers from the appraisal district, but we did see significant rises in average home value, new construction, and our taxable values. And this is where I'm going to talk about tax rates. So we handed out two different tax rate calculation worksheets. I'm going to go into a little bit more depth on these tonight, just because we are asking you to propose a tax rate and you haven't seen this information before. The handwritten one is the one that we received from Smith County Tax Office late this afternoon. As a matter of practice, I took those numbers and I plugged them into our software just as a way to double check what they have versus what I came up with. Just about everything is the same until you get to line number 40. So So as you all know, when we talk about fully funding the EDC, right now we have 3/8 of our sales tax collections go towards reducing property taxes. A couple of years ago, we took 1/8 of that, of the, what was then half a penny, to fund the EDC. And so when we talk about fully funding the EDC, the idea is that we would take the remainder 3/8, that is sales tax to reduce property tax, and fund the EDC with that money. That takes an election from the voters. We're not talking about doing that this year. But we have to account for that money in our property tax calculations. When you get to line 40, you'll see an adjustment for 2021 sales tax specifically to reduce property taxes. I think the county failed to account for the money that we put towards that in the previous fiscal year. So you'll see in their calculation, they show 0. In my calculation, I show just over $500,000. That's something that I need to talk to the tax office about, but because I didn't get their calculation until 5 p.m. today, I haven't had a chance to do that. So they may convince me that I'm wrong, I may convince them that they're wrong, and we'll kind of meet in the middle wherever that needs to be. But I did want to bring your attention to that because that's one of the things, a very big thing that remains outstanding. That is what's used to calculate the no new revenue rates, some very specific statutory rates that we have to calculate and provide to you. Okay. So that's a big piece there. I want you to continue looking. These rates in the middle, if they say non-adjusted or they don't take into account sales tax, then those numbers don't mean a whole lot. The other thing that we need to change is if you look at line 42, total 2022 debt to be paid with property taxes and additional sales tax revenue. If you'll remember, early in January, when we sold the 2022 CO bonds, we specifically indicated that we were going to use fund balance out of our debt service fund to keep the property tax rate steady and so that we wouldn't see a jump. Well, our assessed valuations have far exceeded the projections that our financial advisors have given us. But I do think it's still prudent to use fund balance to minimize that debt rate. So you'll see on mine that I show a little bit different numbers in those boxes, in that we plan to use almost $200,000 of fund balance to further reduce that debt rate. Is everybody with me so far? Sorry, I know it's, like I told you, it was like an IRS form. So I show that in box 49, or box 48, our debt rate would be 0.364119, whereas they showed it at 0.400751. All right, and then that further changes our 2022 voter approval tax rate in box 49, and some other things on down the line. In the county's tax rate calculation, they show some things that only apply to counties that we need to have removed. So there's still some, I say all that to say there's still some work that we need to do on this tax rate calculation. So to get to my point, I think the most conservative approach that you as a council can take tonight is to recommend keeping the tax rate the same. The overall tax rate is 79 cents. Staff is incredibly confident that when we get to our next meeting, we will have a very strong recommendation to reduce the overall property tax. Okay? The issue with that is I don't know what that ratio is going to look like when we finish. I don't know if their debt rate is gonna be right, or the debt rate I've calculated is gonna be right, and once you propose it, you cannot go any higher. So if you were to propose a debt rate of 36 cents and it ends up needing to be 40, we have some issues there. So staff is gonna recommend that we keep the overall tax rate, that we recommend a debt rate of 0.400751. And I think that puts us in the safest position legally. But again, I do think we will come back, I'm confident we will come back with a very strong recommendation to reduce the overall property tax rate. I wish I had those numbers for you tonight. I was hoping I was gonna be able to come back and give you an idea of what that was gonna look like, but until we get that straightened out, I feel like doing so would put us at risk in being able to adopt the tax rate within our statutory deadlines.
So the one that you are recommending would be the no new revenue rate as of right now?
The one that the city just gave us, recommend what they're giving us.
I'm gonna recommend 0.400751 for debt service. wanna do the calculation for me on what that would mean for M and O?
How does a $500,000 get missed on their part? Cause I'm pretty sure your numbers are rock solid, so I'm curious
So we even
how
pulled
they missed
last
that.
year's form and said, did we have a number in there at all, and we did, so, that's why I'm so confident we're gonna be able to come back with a reduction, but I've been wrong before, so my husband tells me anyway. So it's not something that I'm willing to stake our property tax rate on, so I'd just rather confirm. But we are the only, as far as I know, we're the only taxing unit in the county that does sales tax to reduce property tax. So I don't think they're used to having to, I think there's a conscious effort, in the boxes that say sales tax to reduce property tax, but I don't know, I think they just missed it in their calculation.
What was that M&O rate again?
Jennifer's,
Point,
400751.
that's the INS rate, not the M and O rate.
oh, sorry.
Oh.
No, that's okay, I just,
400,
751.
and that's INS.
Yes, so the M and O rate.
And there was a pretty hard push to get these numbers out of them, so it's a chance that there wasn't a second look, before. So, I don't think there's anyone here that isn't really, really pushing for some kind of reductions.
So that would make the M and O rate 0.39214.
0.392140.
Yes, sir.
And the overall tax rate would still just stay at the 79 cents.
So that's what we're asking you to propose tonight,
Right,
yes.
but that doesn't mean we can't go backwards.
You can always go
Lower.
lower.
Lower, right, lower,
Okay.
You cannot go higher.
Okay.
Once you
once we got
publish.
all the numbers in, right.
So,
Not bad.
so that's why I'm making that recommendation. Like I said, I'd really hoped to come out and be like, that's what everyone, I'm not willing to put, like I said, that risk in play just yet.
Yeah, we gotta get the numbers right before we
It
can.
ain't
Right.
worth it. Yeah, it ain't worth it.
So,
No gamblers here?
No.
not with other people's
Yeah, if
money.
it's not,
It's one thing if it's mine.
Right. So for the sake of the motion, we just say 79 cents is okay, or
792891.
2891?
Yes.
and this item on the agenda is the entire budget and the tax rate, so if you have any questions or comments or anything that you see in the budget that you'd like to ask, it's appropriate to do that here too.
So one other,
So much lately.
so a couple of things to note, if you go to the last page on both tax rate calculation sheets, page 9. So in section 8, under total tax rate, there are 3 different calculations. Well, those calculations hinge heavily on what your debt rate calculation is. So you will notice on the handwritten copy, the one from Smith County Tax Office, and mine, the no new revenue rates show to be the same. On the voter approved rate, so this is something that came out of Senate Bill 2 in 2019. They made some changes to what was called the rollback rate. So this is the no new revenue rate with 3.5% growth, but they don't adjust the no new revenue rate for sales tax to reduce property tax. Because my first thought is always, if your voter approved rate is 3.5% higher than your no new revenue rate, how can it be lower? Well, we have to do that adjustment for property tax, sales tax to reduce property tax. So there's a caveat, as always, in there. So they show it to be 64.5 cents. I'm showing it to be 70 cents. And then this is the important part. So because we're a city of under 30,000 in population, the voter approved rate means the rate that we can adopt. And if we adopt anything over that, our citizens can petition for an election to roll that number back, okay? But because we're under 30,000, we go by, they'd have to petition, it's not an automatic election. If we exceed the de minimis rate, then it's an automatic election. So on the Smith County Tax Office de minimis rate, it's 0.819256. I show it to be 0.782624. My early projections are that we will be recommending a total tax rate of somewhere around 77 cents. so I expect that we will be under the de minimis rate, so
Right.
we will not have an automatic election. And because we are going to be over the voter approved rate, that's why we have to adopt our tax rate and budget now to give time to call an election for the November election, should our citizens choose to do so, or if we were exceeding the de minimis rate. So you'll see other cities don't adopt theirs until much later, but it's because they're below, they aren't experiencing the same valuation growth and
Yeah.
new construction that we are.
Yeah, the messaging that the city's been issuing for the last 8 years or so has been, we're in a bad situation financially, staff-wise, M&O-wise, and everything. We hope to grow into our tax base. And so the no new revenue rate would be like, let's stop growing into our our tax base. We're done trying to do that. And I think ratcheting us down a little bit every year is something that we can do. And we definitely don't want to gamble on things our chickens that haven't hatched yet, right? We've got a bunch of rooftops under construction. That could all end tomorrow. The housing market goes down, those things never get built, those properties stay idle for a couple of years while it catches back up. So I like that we're not overreaching with where we're at. I like that we're taking a very conservative approach to ratcheting it down and kind of growing into it. But in doing this, not just growing into it, but doing things that we need as a city, in this budget, we're addressing salaries of our existing staff. We're bringing on much needed staff. We're looking at reducing our pilot program that's over in the utility side that kind of takes money from utilities and puts it in the general fund. So it feels like that we're maturing, and all this also planning for facilities that we've needed for a long time, and that our new staff will need to grow into. So it's a great testament. I'm sorry for all the chaos here at the end with the tax rates and the calculations and stuff. It's kind of a shame that it ends that way, but there's been a lot of hard work that went into this, and a lot of thought that went into, how can we move forward and give the city the opportunity to grow the way it needs to, and not just the way we want it to.
Good point.
So Mayor and Council, you've seen this slide on tax rates before. I think my 2022 column is gonna be closer than I thought. So I think that's gonna be a pretty accurate representation of what our tax rate is gonna end up looking like. And I think we had plugged in a 2-cent reduction in the overall tax rate for this slide. So that's kind of where I'm headed and where my mind is, once we get the discrepancies between the two rate calculations kind of figured out. This is where it would put us with some other cities in the area. You can see that we're still on that high end, with the proposed being at the bottom, but it does move us lower. So we're excited about that.
And we're in a great situation utilities wise, still at about half capacity. You see stuff about, voluntary rationings, and you think that, oh my gosh, we're running out of water. But, those are just things that we put in place to ensure that the water levels maintain, where they need to be. We're not running out of water. We're not really reaching capacity that way. And talking to another couple of elected officials throughout the week, there's some cities hurting on the sewer and water, and looking at $21 million projects that are about to come in and replace some of those things. So I think goodness for where we are as a city with our infrastructure, those are the big ones. We have some small problems that we're fixing, but it looks like we're making really good progress in addressing those. So diligent work on the part of the staff and the council for letting us go in that direction. So a testament to you guys.
Okay, so that's kind of the last slide I have on property tax. Everybody okay with where we are there? And we'll move into looking at the general fund and utility fund for budget. Okay, so your line item budget did not reflect any change in property tax revenues. We were waiting on the property tax rate calculations. We will have those plugged into you in your packet before the next meeting. I'll send it out even sooner if we can get it done. The current line item budget, again, does not reflect those projects that we've been talking about. There's a reason why I do it that way. As the mayor talks about, sure, we could stop, progressing as a city, and that's kind of what that first line item budget pass is if we just maintained our operations as they stand today, where do we stand? Because that's an important piece to look at when we do these tax rate calculations. If our growth stops, what's it truly going to take us to continue operating? And then as we get these numbers and we see what the growth actually is, then we can plan on how we move forward and improve efficiency and efficacy for our organization. So the current line item budget reflects approximately $400,000 in revenues over expenditure before those property tax revenue changes and the implementation of those needed projects, which are identified at about $623,000. I think based on the rate calculations I've seen today, and if we can lower that debt rate even lower than what the tax office shows, we will have even more capacity right there. So I think we'll be in great shape to implement all of the recommended projects in the upcoming fiscal year. The line item budget reflects an increase in revenues of 8%, excluding property tax revenue changes. And this is an important thing, and I kind of keep harping on this. You know, the line item budget reflects only a 3.25% increase in expenditures for the general fund. In this day and age, I think that's a testament to the work that our staff does. You know, I've been in cities where there's some fluff or maybe some things in the budget. That doesn't happen here. Our staff does a great job of keeping their costs low and monitoring those and doing those in a way that is fiscally responsible. So let's talk about some of those projects again. The compensation plan, which is a 5% raise for all non-public safety staff, implementing a step plan for our public safety staff so that we can be more competitive in both recruitment and retention. A staffing plan of about $125,000, which is adding 4 new public safety personnel, 2 police officers, 2 full-time firefighters. A new strategic plan. I think, I'm hoping Susan and I will have, and Jody will have some capacity to work on a unified development ordinance after the first of the calendar year to get that cleaned up. Again, the reduction of the pilot, the income from the utility fund to the general fund, which is in lieu of taxes. Facility maintenance, we have a couple of minor things that we just need to take care of in some of our facilities that would afford us the opportunity to do. And then community engagement, again, a parks plan, parks and trails plan, and the inflatable fire safety house for the fire station. Okay.
So the Unified Development Ordinance, is there a vision to where, like the $75,000 covers maybe some professional planning? I know there's a lot of combing to do through and unifying all of our ordinances.
Right, so that $75,000 would be engineering, we would hire an engineering or development firm with development planning professionals to go through and kind of lead that process. It's a pretty significant process, so.
And that's to get rid of contradictions, so that, it's just to make it all.
That's a good thing. That's
So
a good thing.
our subdivision ordinance, our zoning ordinance, all of our development standards, the things we've added, right-of-way permits, things we've changed along the way, they contradict each other. Can incorporate things like landscaping requirements, sidewalk requirements, just public works standards for infrastructure, installation, all those types of things would be incorporated. Not only do ours currently contradict themselves, but some of them are incredibly dated, mid-90s, so they haven't kept up with kind of the times and the way that development occurs now. It will not make significant changes to zoning classifications, future land use map. It is not a comprehensive plan,
Right.
which is the document that kind of incorporates those things, but it will clean up the language. It'll give us an opportunity to go through things like our sign ordinance, which is incredibly difficult to manage and interpret and enforce. So it will give us the opportunity to do some of those things. It'll be planning and zoning will be heavily involved throughout that process, as will you.
Yeah, I think it's like the parks master plan and the Unified Development Ordinance kind of gets us in a position to start on a master plan. Or, comprehensive plan, right.
So what's this strategic plan for 20,000?
So in 2018, the council and some stakeholders developed the strategic plan that we're under now. When you go back and look at that strategic plan, we've made a lot of progress, and it's 5 years old. So I think it's time that you as a body go back and look at that document and make sure that it
It's visionary.
actually reflects, because we're implementing a lot of those things that were visionary in 2018. And so what do you want to do next? So.
Sure,
that
where's the
is-
20,000 come into play though?
That's
What does
about
that
what we
cover?
spent on the 2018 plan with the facilitator, to somebody.
It's a third party that
Yes,
to pay for?
yes.
Okay.
Any more questions on the general fund? Okay. Utility fund, again, we are not recommending any changes to our water and sewer rates. One thing that I didn't mention in the general fund is that contractually, we do have an increase with Republic Services that will go into effect every October. That was part of our contract renewal. So on this one, but again, no changes to water and sewer charges. Our current line item budget reflects approximately $131,000 in revenue over expenditures before we reduce the pilot, so that will kind of, will show a reduction in expenditures of about $60,000 is what staff's recommendation is, and then the implementation of needed projects, which include the generator and the compensation plan, so.
Just read my mind.
Uh,
Good.
So we kept revenues flat just to be on the conservative side. As you all know, water and sewer, that's a commodity. Water is especially, depending on if it's a dry year or wet year. We don't know really where that's gonna fall, and we can't even tell that until the last 3 months of the fiscal year. So, best practice is to kind of leave that flat for now. I think we increased it some for the current fiscal year in the budget process that we went through last year, so we've left it flat for the upcoming year. And then expenditures, line item budget reflects a decrease in expenditures of 1.5%. If you'll remember, in the current year fiscal budget, we had a large capital expenditure of about $100,000 to do some tank painting. So with that falling off, that's why it shows a reduction of expenditure. We're not actually gonna reduce expenditures because we're gonna replace that $100,000 expenditure with a new $100,000 expenditure to get the generator at the 110 North plant. So expenses will be relatively flat, except for the compensation plan that I mentioned. It also affects the utility fund. You see the generator and the reduction in the pilot there.
So does everybody understand the pilot? It's a payment in lieu of tax. It's funds that are raised on the utility side and then moved over to the general fund to help make up for what we were lacking on our tax base over there. So as we reduce what we move over to the general fund, we can keep more money in utilities and then start getting to the point where we can start lowering our overall rate.
Or at
when
least
we move
keeping it flat
Yeah,
as time
keeping
goes
it-
on.
right.
So,
As
It's-
inflation goes up, we stay flat. I mean, that's a pretty good testament to our utilities.
so, right now, that's at about $360,000. This would take it down to $300,000. So we'll keep chipping away again at that. So, any questions on the utility fund? Let's talk about American Rescue Plan. As you all know, we've been allocated just over $2 million through the American Rescue Plan. Staff is recommending that we spend that money and dedicate it towards fiber projects, any parks projects that are identified in that Park and Trail Master Plan, and towards the either property acquisition and construction related expenses for a new fire station. That portion that goes to the fire station won't cover the whole thing, but it could make a significant dent in it depending on how much you all want to spend in those three areas. So
Are those ARPA funds are available now?
I don't know that we've received the second tranche. They sent us the first half last summer. And
But
it should
it's
be-
coming.
It should be coming sometime in August, I believe, is when we expect to receive
Okay.
it.
Alright.
They did make some changes in the Treasury's final rule where we can take, I believe, what is called the standard allowance. It's kind of like a standard deduction on your taxes. So we're kind of working through some of those things and what those implications are for us. But I expect, what they've said is that they're gonna assume that if you received under 10 million, you're using all of it for revenue replacement. So I think we will have the freedom and opportunity, and I've seen several other cities allocating funds towards these three types of specific
Yeah.
projects. So I think we'll be in good shape to do that.
Yeah, there's a website out there where you can search for projects that have been completed under ARPA, and these are very tame compared to what cities found in Minnesota before. And they spell it out on there too. They're pretty bold about it. But I was asking the question just to make sure that if something came up under one of these categories, that we had the funds available to go ahead and take action on it if it was.
So if it were something like property acquisition, I would say yes, we're in great shape. We could either use general fund balance and reimburse ourselves going
I see.
forward, or we still have a significant portion of the first half, that was received. The only thing we used it for was for some ways to compensate staff for their work during the height of COVID-19
Right, overtime and
pandemic.
stuff,
So,
right.
and the fiber feasibility study was paid for out of this, but for the most part, we still have a majority of the first half of that payment
Okay.
that we received. So we should be financially strong enough to do anything that would require immediate movement. And I think by the end of the month, we'll have the second half.
Okay.
Included in your packet were some of the line item detail for the smaller funds, including stormwater, the EDC, vehicle replacement, and debt. I will tell you on vehicle replacement, Mayor Wansley may have been the only one on the council when and maybe Zach, when we moved to Enterprise
Oh,
to
yeah.
do our vehicle replacement. It was something that I kind of went into with some trepidation. We were facing some pretty serious needs. I think the average age of our vehicles was 11 years old when we started that process. And now that we've been in it a couple of years, I will tell you, I'm glad that we are not trying to source vehicles in this market. I'm so thankful that we have Enterprise doing a lot of the heavy lifting on that. I know government order banks are staying open for 24 or 48 hours, and there's just no way we could be able to turn it around without their help. So, but the actual vehicle replacement fund is kind of a way just for us to track vehicle replacement. But it's really intended to be a net zero. You kind of see the transfer out in each department and the transfer in vehicle replacement. Just that was a recommendation of our auditors to help with funding. EDC, we did increase the revenues to reflect the anticipated and realized increase that we're seeing in sales tax collections. And then stormwater and debt, there weren't any significant changes in either of those funds. So that gets us to next steps. At this meeting, the council is required to propose the tax rate to allow adequate time for our publications. And then August 16th, hopefully we will adopt the tax rate in the budget, including holding our public hearings, and the new fiscal year will begin October 1st. Mayor, just kind of want to re-emphasize your point earlier. You know, I don't want all of the kind of frustration with the late tax rate calculation to overshadow all of the great things that are in this budget. I mean, when the staff and I talk about the things that we have on our list to accomplish in the upcoming year between facilities, fiber, parks, development, I mean, public safety, the increased resiliency that we're gonna see in our public works department, that's something that I think everybody in this room ought to be incredibly proud of. I know the staff is proud of it, I know we're excited. If you can get through this daunting budget season and be excited at the end of it, I'll take that as a win every day. So, thank you. Thank you for supporting us, and we're excited to continue the good work.
Oh, thank you. Any more questions or comments or anything on the budget of the proposed tax rate? All right.
That's pretty detailed.
It is very
He's
exciting.
like,
though.
half
I
the
feel like I'm
I
back.
was actually just thinking, I'm like, man, I wonder if we ever had a different city manager or these other cities that have different ones, do they get this much detail? And the answer in my head was no, they probably don't. So thank you for all that you do for our city. It makes our job a lot easier. I just, I look at what you send us, we do this, and
It does.
you make it easy, all your hours you put in, so very detailed. Thank you.
It's always appreciated.
Thank you.
Really.
It's my third city manager, and I'm counting Jennifer. Jennifer had a great short term. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of extra work at the city manager level that goes into this, and partnering up with somebody as capable as, our executive staff here helps a lot, but
Yep.
absolutely. Thank you, Councilman Rosenstein. Any other comments or questions?
I'm just excited about all the stuff, all the neat stuff, and we need it. It's not a wish list, it's a need list. And actually we'll get microphones that actually work. I mean, I'm excited.
You're gonna be asking them to turn it down.
Turn it down.
Turn it
It's
down.
it's not a rock show.
That's right.
So,
Yeah.
action item will actually be on number 2 to propose the tax rates. We'll need some very specific language that was included in your packet and a record vote on that.
Zach took pretty good notes.
But we need to set the public hearing date, that's my concern.
We can take all the time in the world to set the
There
public hearing
is
date.
an error, a Scrivener's error on number 2. It should be 22-23
yeah.
tax rate. I apologize.
All right. Just for the record, we will be setting the 2022-23 tax rate.
One vending.
So there we go. See?
I do think we can move forward with the public hearing and setting the rate with one council member on set.
60% is what I found. I think, Jennifer, we found it.
Well,
Okay.
4 out of 5 is 80%.
At least 80%.
Yeah.
At least, on a good day.
you the exact number, but okay.
Approximately 80%.
Okay.
So here's what the law says. If the tax rate will exceed the no new revenue tax rate, the vote on the ordinance setting the tax rate must be a record vote and must be approved by at least 60% of the members of the city council. So yeah, we should be at least 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 6 if the mayor counts, because there's some question as to whether or not you are a member of the body, but you're not voting, so.
I'll vote if I have to, and just
But
throw it on there
If we
just in
can have
case. huh?
at least 5 of you, we'll be in great shape.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Susan. Okay. So we will set that public hearing date for August 16th at 6 p.m.
Okay. All right, well, that being the case, then we are on to, actually, the item that's up for right now is actually setting that proposed tax rate. If somebody has a number they're comfortable presenting as the tax rate.
Well, I took some notes, I don't mind making the motion at all.
Feel free.
I'll make a motion to propose a total tax rate of 0.792891 per $100 valuation for the 2022-23 fiscal year, where 0.392140 is to be used for the maintenance and operations, and 0.400751 for interest and sinking funds, and set the public hearing on the tax rate for 6 p.m. on August 16th, 2022 at 311 East Main Street, White House, Texas.
Second.
May,
Yeah.
can we open for discussion?
Yeah, open for
Mayor and
discussion
Council,
right
I have one item of concern now that I've heard that motion out loud. I'm so sorry. So my concern would be, Jennifer and Susan, if we reduce the debt rate to 0.36 and the M&O rate ends up being higher than 0.39, have we put ourselves into the bind?
I think the publication just shows the proposed tax rate, I don't think you have to split it.
You don't split
I
it,
don't think so.
Okay,
but I'm worried with the motion being 0.39.
so do you need a motion that's just a total tax rate and not a
Total
split?
tax rate.
Can you hand me that paper that you just had? Sorry, Mayor and Council, that's
That
why I don't
takes-
like to get it an hour before.
It takes
the
time to do it
meeting.
right.
5 minutes
Take our
before.
time and do it right. It's fine.
Agreed.
I have nowhere to be.
I'm sorry.
James is sorry for him. I'm good though.
Susan, I'm thinking we have that motion worded that way for a reason. Maybe Texas Tax Code, section 26.05 or 26.06.
Are we Googling that?
Let's see.
20,
26.05 maybe. That may be something completely unrelated.
2605, city council must adopt a tax rate that exceeds the voter approval rate no later than the 71st day. I think that's what we're looking for.
I mean, these are long.
Yeah, generally, these are received well ahead of time, and the city staff has a good part of the day to look them over, and then if there's a discrepancy, even more time to work with the tax assessor's office to smooth those out. So an extra 15 minutes in a meeting is nothing compared to the amount of time that's usually put into it.
The tax rate consists of two components, each of which must be approved separately. The components are for a taxing unit owned in a school district, the rate that if applied to the total taxable value will impose the total amount described by another section, less any amount of additional sales and use tax revenue that will be used to pay debt service. Does that help? And then maintenance and operation is the other part. And it says that this has to be adopted before September 30th.
Yeah, I think that might be the August 16th meeting though.
Yeah, I'm wondering, because we're not necessarily adopting it tonight, is
Yeah,
that the
just-
language we're using? We're approving it,
Approving it, right?
You're proposing it.
proposing it, and so if it's not adopted until the next one, that's still before the September 30th.
Is this the form? Is this the form? That's not the form, is it?
So the two components do have to be approved separately, so I think if we just do the total and don't tonight propose them separately, we're fine.
Okay.
Watch that good study.
So they have to be approved, but it doesn't state in which, they have to be proposed.
Well, right, so really there's no language in here that discusses the actual
Split
proposal.
it on the ordinance. It's
What
not
this
split in
is
the
really
ordinance.
set on is the
Debbie, one from last
adoption.
I only split it
In
on
the
the
adoption,
ordinance.
they have to be approved separately.
Okay.
So what he read is gonna be for the adoption. What we can do tonight is just do that grand total of 0.79
Yeah.
as our
2891.
proposed total tax rate, and not even get the breakout yet.
Okay, so the motion on the floor will die
Yes,
without a second? Or
It had a second. It needs
I'm
to be
gonna rescind
rescinded.
my
rescind the
second.
second, yeah, rescind them,
Rescind the motion.
I'll rescind the motion
okay.
and
Motion's off
make
the floor.
There you go.
another motion to propose a total tax rate of 0.792891 per $100 evaluation for the 2022 and 2023 fiscal year.
Second.
Have a motion and a second, any further discussion?
And set the public hearing.
Oh, sorry.
And set the public hearing on the tax rate for 6 p.m. on August 16th, 2022 at 311 East Main Street, White House, Texas.
Second this
Second.
amendment, okay. Motion and a second, any further discussion? Hearing none, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Yes, sir. Zach Briscoe,
Yes.
Georgia Harris.
Yes.
Keith Rosenstein.
Yes.
John Chambers.
Yes.
And Michael Lowe.
Yes.
All right, with that, the motion passes unanimously. That takes us down to item 3 on the agenda. Again, sorry for the delay, glad we were able to work that out. Staff update on Broadband Fiber Feasibility Project with CobbFendley.
Mayor and Council, I don't have much new. We did send the amendments that you all approved to the RFI to them. I need to check back with them on if they were, where we stand on releasing that and what their timing is gonna be. But we, as a result of signing their contract to extend their services, we have also sent over 19 right-of-way permits from a fiber provider, Frontier, for their review. So,
19?
19 right-of-way permits.
So they really are on the move.
They are
Great.
on the move, and they are wanting to know when we can get those reviews back to them. So we are working fast fast and furiously with CobbFendley to get that done, and that is certainly our priority right now, so.
Oh my gosh, I never imagined it would be that much of a burden. I'm glad we outsourced it.
And that's only a portion of them. They're only sending me a few at a time. There are
Okay.
more to come.
Well, that was timely. Good.
So just as an item of note, not only will this put, it's a pretty significant workload add to Susan who handles our permitting, so tracking all of that with CobbFendley and making sure that's happening. It will also be a significant workload add on our public works teams who will be doing all of the line locates for those projects. So my conversation with our new public works director, Jason Wright, this morning was as we start figuring out what that workload looks like and what their timing is on those line locates, if we need to have staff stay over for some overtime things, we are willing to do that to make sure that they're able to move forward in a way that protects not only our infrastructure, but gets the service to our citizens as quickly as possible. So just an information item for you. We'll be working through that just as diligently as we can.
So we consider the rate that we're charging for those right-of-ways and the rate that we negotiated with CobbFendley for their professional services and the actual labor of the city to actually implement the line locates and your facilitation with CobbFendley. Are we still revenue neutral on those?
We may need to revisit
Okay.
that ordinance as we move through. It was one of those things that we didn't really know until we
Right.
started the process, so we'll be keeping a close eye on it as soon as we start getting some invoices from CobbFendley and see what their actual review time is and what they're charging us for those things. We'll have a better idea of what that looks like. So expect some changes potentially to that going
Okay,
forward.
good. I'm glad to see you're keeping an eye on that.
I don't need any names, but I'm just curious, are there anybody else in the shadows that are kinda, I don't want names necessarily.
Well, I can give you a name. I mean, the name that I spoke to tonight before we came here was Vexus, and there were two individuals at that event that we were at before this,
Yeah.
and they said, "Oh, we're coming. It'll probably be late next year." And I said, "Too late." So we've got other people coming in. I mean, we're glad to have you. I think competition is what we were
Yeah.
all seeking. out of
But they're
that study.
allowed to come in.
They are, and
Yeah.
I said we'll be happy to help facilitate that when you're ready.
That's right.
But we just finished that fiber feasibility study, and we've got somebody coming into town that's moving a lot faster. And they said, we understand, we just had other places that were their priority. So,
Never underestimate the private sector.
yeah, I mean, we'll
Yeah.
see.
Yeah, I know.
But that's kind of, that was kind of the feel we got from that first conversation. Like I
Yeah.
told you, Frontier was a different,
Sure.
was a different kind of meeting. So,
Good.
We've been underserved by the private sector for the last 20 years.
Yeah, that's the truth.
I started underestimating them. But it's it's great, and we still have the RFI out, which is a proposal to say if you want to come in and offer service in the city in exchange for a little bit of funding from the America First funds to make it worth your while, in exchange for a service level agreement with our citizens that you serve, so that if they have an option for service that gives them a voice is kind of what we're going for there. That's still out there too. So maybe Vexus or somebody else along those lines will see that and go, oh, that shifts our priority. We're actually going to come in a little bit earlier. It's kind of,
Very
nope,
good.
somebody might not bite on it. It's totally up to capitalism and private enterprise, and if they think it's a market they want to explore with those incentives, but we had to do our due diligence to put it out there, try to give the citizens what they want.
You never know.
Turns out we don't. I thought something might come out of this, but I never thought it would be just. I didn't know we were breaking loose in Avalanche, so I'm really glad to hear that, and that the staff got those services in place in time for that. So it's a good deal.
That's another thing to be excited about.
it is.
It really is.
Starting to run out of adrenaline. All right. Any more questions or comments on item 3 here, CobbFendley? All right. That takes us down to item number 4, the staff update on facilities planning.
Very confidential. Purchased 109 East Main. We thought we really should take a step back and kind of take a look at all of our city facilities. Back in April or May, Randall Scott from Randall Scott Architects is here, and they had concluded kind of had been working on their assessment of all of our city facilities. And at that time, our focus has kind of shifted to what we can do at 109 East Main. And if you remember when we started that conversation, we were thinking some city staff would move down to 109 East Main to accommodate some staffing level increases that we were anticipating. And after Mr. Scott came and presented the material, that kind of shifted in a way that we can hopefully keep all of our city staff offices together and really utilize the space down at 109 East Main for some community spaces and city adjacent organizations. So after that meeting, a couple of city staff and the mayor got together with Mr. Scott and kind of revised the preliminary floor plans that he had prepared, and that's what's in front of you tonight. So the front page is 109 East Main. As you can see, on the western end of that building is a banquet hall, and one change that we have recommended to him in that space is maybe removing that westernmost edge of tables and putting in a platform or a stage of some sort.
Mr. Black, can you pull that up on the screen? The
yes,
printouts are gonna
sorry.
be hard for them, and you can zoom in, I believe, on each.
Well, I've got this
Well,
in the
not on the
PowerPoint, so-
PowerPoint, but still, that's even a little bit better than what we're looking at here
So
with
let's
printouts.
do this, so in kind of, oh yeah, there we are. So
Whoa.
this area, we're talking about removing those tables and putting in some sort of platform or stage along this wall. So this is the banquet hall space. Here we have a reception area. This would most likely be kind of the main entrance that you would see. And that's a new entrance to the building. Some collaborative space here with just a U-shaped table. I think this would be pretty flexible space. If you were having a large banquet, you could even set this area up for serving. This is a temporary or partition wall that can be moved out of the way for even larger events.
Yeah, so imagine most of the time that partition wall is up and that door is closed, and you won't need the reception, you know, the banquet hall most of the time. You just have that one entrance that has the common reception area there. The furniture that's in place, like Mrs. Black said, is configurable. You have furniture storage over next to the training room, so they can just wheel that stuff in there. We've got some of those wheelable tables, kind of the same design in here today. So that'll make that space flexible. When I first looked at this, that reception area was weird to me. Like, why would I want an octagon table right next to my reception desk? Like, and what kind of board meetings take place in my reception area? But I think it's just a demonstration of the flexibility of the furniture that we're thinking about going on in there. Sorry, go ahead, Ms. Black.
And then after the last meeting with Randall Scott, you do see an elevator that would be right here in this building to access the second floor. Along this rear wall are men's and women's restrooms. And then coming down this way, you see a training room with 32 seats. That is something that we are sorely lacking right now. We do not have a conducive space for our city staff to do any sort of training, host area trainings, or even regional meetings for this area. I'm gonna go back down the hall this way. This is a family restroom or a unisex restroom. This is gonna be the IT closet. Coming around here is just a warming kitchen. We anticipate that most of the events held in this facility will not need a full kitchen. It will just be for catering to come in and set up for either the banquet hall, the training room, or even the collaborative spaces that we're going to talk about in just a second. This is the electrical closet, mechanical closet, furniture storage, as Mayor Wansley mentioned. The largest use out of this space is really intended to be collaborative space, and I think we anticipate any number of different types of events to be held here, whether it's just somebody that normally works from home and just wants a space to come in and work with a little bit more activity, to things like, you know, we're about to hold a retirement party for Mr. Tomlin and are having to use an outside facility to do that. So I think this space really lends itself to all different kinds of functions, chamber networking events, I think you name it, and I think it will be accommodated well here.
Yeah, we could have the Tyler Area Builders Association could have been there
Right.
instead of where they were hosted at their own facilities today.
And I think this is just this is kind of a kitchen space in the rear here with a small kind of bar here. And then just a little small private room if anybody needed to take a phone call or have a meeting with just one other individual, they could step inside there. And then another conference room here. This is all booth seating along the eastern wall. And then you see another kind of collaborative space here with a movable wall here. I think this gives us really the potential for another rentable space besides just our banquet hall and training room. I can see this being used for small showers or other types of events down here that would really give our community a place to kind of gather. In addition, if you don't need a full 100-seat banquet hall. And then moving upstairs, we have a small reception area. One change that we have requested here is to flip the layout of this space. There are no windows on this side of the building due to the roof pitch that's existing for this L shape that comes out here, but there are windows on the rear side of this building, so we are asking the architect to flip the layout of this to allow the offices to have windows. And it would provide for 2 or 3 offices, and we anticipate that that would be used for future staffing of our city adjacent organizations. So at the point that we have a full-time executive director of the EDC, the chamber has a full-time executive director, they would have some space, and we feel like that would really, truly help this facility, you know, kind of maintain that feel of being the part of the city and a place that you can come and work together with all of our city adjacent organizations. One thing that I didn't mention is that we're hearing from, you know, we have over 15 organizations that attend our interagency council meetings every month. And for each of those organizations, we hear time and time again, they don't have anywhere to meet. You know, they're kind of at the mercy of a church or a bank even to meet in their boardroom. Stephanie and I had a meeting today that we had to have in the boardroom of a bank because there just isn't anywhere else that will accommodate those types of meetings. And we think this will be a great use of that space, the connectivity to the space that the school is leasing us to the rear, the conjunction that that's opened up with the farmers market. I think we're already seeing the benefits of this facility pay off, and we haven't even done anything with it yet. So I can't wait to see what this does for us going forward.
Yeah, and you look at all that, and that is community space that is designed for the community to take advantage of. So that training room, you look at that and you think of, you know, what could be held there. It could be, you know, Keep White House Beautiful has a botanist come in and give a presentation, or a subject matter expert on economic development comes in. We all learn from that. Same thing with the chamber. We have a high-level elected official that comes in and wants to give a presentation to a subset, you know, just a part of the community. They can have it in there. It's just something that can be scheduled and something that can be used. So I'm really excited about this space and how it's going to bring the community together. You guys see anything in there that you were hoping would be a part of this that you don't see included?
Just make sure we have the latest, greatest electronics and microphones that work. I mean, it is, and echoing what the mayor said, it is pretty neat, and we need this. We need it, and there's room for expansion possibly. You know, adding on maybe.
Yeah, I was literally just wondering about the security, like where cameras and stuff, because that looks fairly challenging to get coverage on, but it can be done, so.
Yeah, I think,
not that
so kind of where we stand right now, we're kind of to the point that this fulfills the contract for the facilities plan. So kind of the next step is a true architecture and engineering contract with the architect to kind of move beyond this step. And I think we'll get into all of those things, you know, because this doesn't even show really where we want windows. And I mean, there are so many things. It's just conceptual at this point. We're just trying to get the general layout, and then we'll start working on those things. But for sure, cameras, controlled access to this building will be particularly challenging because we don't anticipate staffing how we staff this facility will be something that we need to work through as we go forward, and we'll come back to that after we look at the next slide. But yeah, I think all of those things will be particularly important. AV for sure in these conference, collaborative training, banquet spaces. I mean, knowing that we can bring your own device and be able to present in a way that's intuitive and easy.
Yeah, you might not have an AV expert there to help you hook it up. Yeah.
So, right, I
plug
mean,
and
it needs
play,
to be
right.
something that's pretty easy. And I think, you know, we can get there. We just want to make sure that I know that's a priority for the staff and for you all. So we'll make sure that that gets done in a way that makes sense and hopefully is easily manageable.
What's an apple bar?
I think he's just trying to indicate the kind of style that's going to anticipate that look like. So either a long counter or a long table with stools.
Usually high chairs, yeah.
Because
Like a
when you
stand-up.
Google apple bar, it's some kind of nice dessert, so I was just kind of curious what this, I'm like, well, I've never heard of an apple
I
bar
think he's just
before.
kind of trying to show the style or the feel of what
Okay.
that would look like.
You could push the stool away and it's a stand-up desk
I
almost type.
can't say that didn't make me hungry earlier.
It's like, oh boy. Okay,
I think it looks great.
looks
Yeah, it
flexible,
does. It
yeah.
looks very community
Really
oriented.
puts together, I think, what we all had in mind when we originally were looking at the building, so I'm excited about it.
And Randall Scott came out and kind of hand sketched as we talked and threw ideas where we could, so. Okay, so as you know, as we had originally talked about, we thought council chambers may be here, some city staff, and then after that last meeting, we kind of moved back towards the potential of expanding City Hall. And so he has done some preliminary drawings on that, and this one's gonna be really hard to see because of the ratio of this picture, so you have a printed copy kind of in front of you. I'll do my best to point it out here. So everything kind of south of this line is where we sit today, or new.
That was my question, yeah, where are we now? Yeah,
So we're about right here,
okay.
right
That-
now.
The
That
cover-
courtyard is where the breezeway is right now.
This is
Okay.
the
Between the
existing
two
breezeway.
buildings,
All right.
yeah.
Right here, yeah.
So we're repurposing what we have right now. That big square on top is existing structure. And just like with the other one, we're not tearing down a building and building something brand new. We're getting the most we can out of it with the money by repurposing what's already there to the best of our ability.
Kinda enhancing what we got, huh?
So, one thing before we start, don't pay attention to the titles on the offices, those are all subject to change.
We can't
It's
read
just
them
kind of-
anyway.
Yeah. So I didn't know, maybe on the printout or what I sent to you,
My
maybe you could,
contact.
in the actual packet, I think you can zoom in. But I wanna start back here. One of the conversations that we had with Randall Scott to start with was, he asked if we could take in any park space, and I said, what we cannot do is do anything to those giant magnolia trees that are in the park. So he has planned around that, but with that being said, one of the things that we had talked about, we have a lot of wasted space in the police department. We have some existing holding cells that we no longer use and do not anticipate that we will use in the future. There's too much liability, there are too many requirements, we no longer have 24-hour dispatch in the building, so we can't put people in
Food
those
service.
cells. Or food service, I mean, there are just a whole litany of things that go with housing anybody even in a holding cell these days. So we asked the police chief, and I've never had a police chief voluntarily give up space. I about fell over when he agreed, so I think we can utilize where those holding cells are now and kind of refashion this back portion of the building. We have a couple of concerns with our layout as it exists today, so there's no additional office space for any new positions in the city hall side as we stand today. We cannot expand our counter space, any of those types of things. Our break room barely holds and functions for what we need it to. So this would be a new break room back here. Restrooms would be here. This also gets, right now, all of our restrooms are directly across the hall from people's offices, which is just problematic in several ways, and I won't go into the details on that. And then, so it would keep our storage spaces here and allow for 2 additional office spaces here. This is the current break room right here. So it would expand our counter space in the kitchen and allow some things that we like to do as a part of our organizational culture that are pretty limited as it stands today. These offices all remain the same as they are today. We would remove the customer service counter to the new portion of the building and refashion this entire front wall to staff offices. This would be the new main entry into City Hall, and we would have our customer service counter right here. One thing that I have asked that we change is to carry that counter all the way down this wall. For future expansion, we don't have to put windows in it all right now, but I don't want to limit or try to match that countertop at some point in the future. Spread these positions out, do a small L return to give them just a little bit more counter space as they're operating. Here would be publicly accessible restrooms, a conference room. There would be another conference room right here. And we have asked that they add another door on this side of the conference room to allow staff to access it without having to access the lobby. And then as we move down here, this is what he's calling pre-function space, just kind of an anteroom to allow, for example, if you were having the Boy Scouts presenting the flags and the pledge, and a place for them to meet. And then council chambers here, I counted the seats, and I think there were
That was my question.
60 seats for the public.
Not bad.
And then, and it would be 60 seats that, you know, are for actual people, maybe not sitting in each other's lap, like if we were to get them in here. A very large dais that would accommodate, you know, all of our board meetings. Right now, we have some boards that have 7 members, and we're trying to add people here, and it gets pretty tight. And then an executive session, conference room, restroom, and just a small little kitchen space off the rear of that,
So not just council, like planning and zoning,
Right.
EDC, any city adjacent executive boards that need to meet in there, so that's good. And it looks like it's designed for acoustics. I mean, even, well, I have state-of-the-art sound, we want it to be loud, but the room is actually designed to receive voice, so
And project forward.
that's great. And the entrances being right next to each other is awesome. Anytime I'm in a meeting across the hall here, there's people that, even though we have signs on the buildings, people that walk in and try to pay their bill or ask a question. I think this is gonna cut down on a lot of confusion on how to approach and how to interact with our city staff, so that's great.
And it also does it in a way that is safe. Right now, you know, traveling between that breezeway, our court personnel are traveling through there, you know, they're holding court and dealing with defendants in a way that is not incredibly safe for our staff or other defendants right now. I think this gives us a lot of opportunity. This would make, you know, all of our facilities ADA accessible,
Okay.
and would catch us up in some ways that we are lacking right now.
So this chambers is where court would be held as well?
Yes.
And the staff would have room to be back there?
Right, they could either be behind the dais, or because it's in the same building and just down the hall, they could help customers at the window that they would normally help
I see.
customers at,
Okay.
instead of being in a separate building,
Right.
without any real connectivity to anyone else. So, I mean, we do have a bailiff, but, I think what this would do for our functionality would be significantly improved. So, staff's recommendation on this and kind of on the timing of this would be that we do 109 East Main first. That we get that community space kind of up and running, and that once that is complete, we move on to City Hall expansion. Having 109 East Main complete gives us the potential for city staff, some city staff, most of our administrative staff to operate out of 109 East Main while this building is under construction. Because that's another concern. There's some pretty significant remodeling that's gonna have to go on.
I was thinking
and
job
expansion.
trailers would be up
Yeah.
on, you guys would be working out of mobile homes.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
good.
that's kind of staff's recommendation on that, but we're open to anything or any suggestions you may have. Again, this would mean that we would lose our drive-through access if we went with this expansion. The courtyard, one item that Mr. Scott specifically wanted me to note is the courtyard is needed because of the roof pitch on the existing building where it would need to go. We need somewhere for that stormwater runoff to go. And so it's not just because we want a nice, pretty courtyard, it's actually a design function and need in that
Right.
space, so.
Well, on that subject, what I'm hoping with, and you can see on the agenda, like we're moving towards getting rid of credit card fees, right? So we're encouraging citizens to use bank draft, which has always been free to them and us. But if they still want to use credit cards and build up anytime points, they can. And we're getting further and further away from a need for a drive-through.
Yeah.
So it seems like we're not just taking that away without any thought to it. We're actually moving towards making it all electronic and maybe even online.
And we still will have a Dropbox, so. if
There's still
people
the
wanna
Dropbox, yeah.
Drop payments, they can. And one of the things that I know the staff, I've kind of charged them with in anticipation of these projects is we need to have as much as we can available to be handled online or digitally. Because this is gonna be disruptive, right, for our citizens and for our staff. And so the more that we can do to prepare now to get those capabilities online and helping our customers to make it intuitive and friendly and easy and not a challenge, the better. So we are working on a few of those things, and that's another reason why we're talking about some of those credit card fees and changing our credit card processor like we did at the last meeting. So taking those steps now will hopefully help that transition.
Absolutely.
I think this is pretty clever layout to maximize the usable space in a fairly small footprint. So it, it's pretty impressive.
I was shocked he was able to get it all in
Right.
there, and the parking, plenty of parking that's required, and in a way that, makes sense.
So once everything's finalized, what would you think an estimated start date would be?
I'll have to check because, like I said, I think this is all just very preliminary right now. They
Right,
are
so-
working on some 3D kind of mock-ups for me this week, so I'll send those to you just as soon as I get them. But I can check on that when he sends over the architectural proposal.
We're a very aggressive council.
Speaking of aggressive, I can see, I know that fire suppression and fire plans for fire will be in place, but I haven't seen any specific mention of active shooter scenarios. I don't know if Chief usually has his eyes on this, Police Chief Robeson usually has his eyes on this stuff. If we could just get a final look on that, just make
Yeah.
sure we're good in that scenario. It's the times we live in.
Yep. We will have them take a look at it from that
Good point.
perspective.
Yeah, and council, if you're not looking at it electronically, you can actually open it up on your computer. You can zoom in. It gets really detailed. So when you get home, take a look at this. Really zoom in on it and see what you have there. It's a really good job they've done. This screen doesn't do it justice. But they've laid out some really good plans here. All right. Do you need an action coming out of this, Mrs. Black, or?
I do not yet, but I will say, I anticipate that we're gonna move forward a lot faster now that we kind of have a general idea on these floor plans. So if you see anything, have any concerns beyond the active shooter scenario, please let me know as soon as possible, because I think I'm hoping we will start seeing some activity pretty quickly.
I'd love to get started on it before materials go up any higher, and
Yeah.
we can snag a team to implement it while they're still available.
Yeah.
Will there be any kind of additional signage? I think I saw on this deal, like by the road.
So he's
Yeah.
got in here a
Yeah.
proposed city hall sign. We'll need to take a look at that
Yeah.
now that the right-of-way work has been done with the Keep My House Beautiful project. But yeah, I mean, he's showing a pretty large monument sign with 3 flagpoles behind it in this corner. But again, I think that will come as we further kind of hash out the details on it.
Where's the flagpoles? Where are they gonna be?
Right
Are they
behind
moved at all?
it.
Right behind it? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, little wavy
There's
lines
3 of
there.
them.
Oh, I thought you said those were light poles. I'm sorry. You said flagpoles? I'm sorry. Okay.
And then we'll have signage to consider at 109. So this is a city building, a city hall. So with this is a community space. We have a little bit more flexibility with the types of maybe animated signage or signage that we can put out. That's probably what you're asking about. You've been advocating for that for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have other options there. Once we get everything in place, we can see what would fit best there.
That's good.
I'd like to see us get started on this ASAP. So,
What day is it?
I mean, we've been talking about it, seems like forever.
Yeah.
Let's help our community out. Let's try to
I
speed it
think
up as
once
much
it
as we can.
starts,
Once you can
the
see the
engine starts
progress,
going, I think,
we've
yeah.
made a lot of progress, but once you
Yeah.
see it in a way that's visible, I mean, we've done a lot of work to get to this point, so I think once you all can, and the community can start seeing it, that'll be when they get excited.
When you start hearing those hammers and the wood and all that, that's gonna be pretty cool, you know.
I would like some messaging to go out to maybe to all of our utilities customers, because we can't rely on people seeing it on Facebook or on the mail that we send out, just to let people know what's going on. You know, the rumors are gonna start, the city's doing well, so they're starting to build themselves a palace or whatever may come out of it. Just to let them know that this is our plan of action. We wanna build this community space. We're building it first. We prioritize that.
Very
We wanna
good.
get that in place, and then we need to make some much needed changes for, what it does serve the community is our city hall. And the city hall should be someplace that, it isn't immaculate, but it's a place, where city services take place, where the community gathers. It should be a place of, I don't know, reverence is what you wanna say, but a place where people come and it's kind of sometimes a happy place, sometimes a solemn place where serious things are done. And we take the people that visit us there seriously is what it needs to show. That we're a city that values your time if you come in and spend your time with us. So just mailing something like that out, that's a high-level overview of what's going on and maybe some high-level timetables of what to expect. I think it would go a long way towards the phone calls that we would receive
Yeah.
from the community on what's going on.
Well, I welcome those phone calls. I definitely welcome them. I see this as nothing but positive. This is nothing but growth for our city, and anybody who may see differently is welcome to. And they're welcome to talk to me as well, because I would love to see why they see it differently. But for me, and I believe everybody here, we see this as a helping hand to our community. We see as we're helping others up. We've got opportunities for people to do things at this community center. We've got opportunity to grow and to provide. Especially, I'm thinking of this training room, not only for the staff, but also for the community. We've got training things that we need to train people on. We've got this so much space, and it's compliant for all those in need. And so, really, for anybody who may not be on board with this, it's okay. It's okay, but we're gonna be moving forward with it because it's a good thing for the community overall. So I welcome the calls, but I really believe we're moving forward with this. Absolutely.
You have to look ahead in the future with city government. You just can't go, and get caught. You have to have vision forward. And, our city is, I guess people love this town like me, and they're looking forward. And I don't think there's any standstill. We don't know about interest rates, but, it sure future looks bright as far as growth.
Bright as this white paper.
That's right.
That's right.
It's nice and bright.
Yeah,
Well,
I think that's great.
I think we've, the way we handled the financing of this project, and both the City Hall project at a time when interest rates were low, and in a way that, even if our growth does significantly slow down, we're still being fiscally responsible and able to pay for these improvements in a way that makes sense to our citizens.
Absolutely.
Reducing the tax rate, and the projections that we used in funding this were incredibly conservative. And, we've far surpassed, I think, what they were projecting for 2027 in this year alone.
Our infrastructure is strong. Those things are needed. If we were building a building and we had issues infrastructurally wise, potholes, bad water, yeah, I could see, but we don't.
If any
We don't.
of us had forward
Which is nice.
vision, 5-10 years from now, I think we'd all be amazed. It's just
Just a glimpse into the future.
Yep.
Right. Yeah, I think it's great. I love it. Over communicating on the plan would be great. Our citizens would appreciate knowing more about what's coming. And if there's not information, somebody will come up with what's actually happened, and that'll catch fire. So, all right.
Yep.
Any more questions or comments on facilities planning? I think we're all.
No, thanks for sharing.
We'll be looking for shovels tomorrow.
Gold shovels.
Just wear a hard hat if you go on.
All right, that brings us to discussion, consideration, and act on an appointment of James Wansley to the East Texas Council of Governments Board of Directors. And this might have looked weird on the agenda. I can give you a little bit of background on this, but in my involvement with the regional middle mile network with the East Texas Council of Governments, I've gotten familiar with the organization. I've expressed interest in getting more engaged in the organization. And they have two boards that relate to us within that organization. They have their board abroad, which is a board of 200 and some odd people that are within the different counties that they serve. And if our body doesn't go through the effort of officially electing or appointing somebody to the position that's available from our city inside of ETCOG's board, then it defaults to me. It's currently defaulted to me. Got a little asterisk on it whenever you look at their board. If you are a formal member of the board, you can apply. It's almost like being on a ballot where you can apply for an opening on their executive board, which is much smaller. It's 22 positions. In most of the counties that make up ETCOG, it's just one county elected official that serves for the whole county. Smith County and Gregg County are a little bit bigger, so they have not only that one county elected official, but they also have a municipal elected official. Out of all the cities in Smith County, they have one elected city official that sits on that executive board. And that's what I would like to apply for. But I can't do that, which is part 6, until part 5 is done, where I become an actual official member of the board. So this is actually.
Something you really want?
Is this a Christmas present gift kind of thing?
I
Wish
mean, how
list?
bad do you want this?
It's,
Talk
this,
to
Bad
us,
enough
Mayor.
to entertain a motion?
this,
Can I go ahead and make-
well, let me say, this Council of Governments is the only one we have. So I think it's our duty to make sure that it is the best Council of Governments in the state. In the past, the position that's part of number 6 has been in Lindale. And I think it's time for that position to come to White House, to be
Hear, hear.
represented.
You just read my mind. We've never had anything, really.
I think the last time this city held a position on the executive board was over 20 years ago, Dale Moran.
I would like to make a motion to appoint James Wansley to the East Texas Council of Governments Board of Directors.
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. With that motion carries.
I'd like to make another motion.
Okay.
I'd like to nominate James Wansley to serve on the East Texas Council of Governments Executive Committee.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? And I'll say this, I'm gonna apply, I might not get it, but I'm gonna do my darndest to try to win this for us. Any further
Let us
discussion?
know if we can help.
Just don't forget us. Don't forget us, Mayor.
I'll be right here the whole time. The moment I'm not an elected official, I'm no longer on this executive committee. So it's not something that's gonna follow me past my term, serving the city of White House. As long as I'm on here, it'll be in the service of the city of White House through ETCOG.
Anytime you can do better, and do great.
Yeah.
Very good, Michael. That is absolutely right.
That's right.
All right,
Absolutely.
fully motivated to say any further discussion?
No?
No.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. All right, with that, the motion carries. That brings us on to item 7.
Super excited for you, Mayor. Congrats, congrats.
Another thing for you to do.
I will not be asking for donations for this campaign. It's not literally a
Do
campaign.
you ever sleep? Yeah.
It's off and on. Number 7, consider future agenda items. We know one thing for sure that's gonna be on the next agenda. That is,
Budget and tax rate,
That's
public
right.
hearing and adoption.
Mhm.
We'll see what I have for facilities by the next meeting.
oh yeah.
Um,
Well, now I have a question. Will that'll need to go out to bid, right? What type of bid? Will it be a request for qualifications?
let me talk to them, find out.
And the difference is, one of those has a price that we can say, yeah, that's a great price, let's get that. The other one is, it just shows they're qualified and we don't know what the price
So
is.
I think on the bid for facilities planning on the RFQ that we sent out for that, I noticed that we would likely, or at least explore entering into a contract with the winning architectural firm to do design work on at least 109 East Main, so we may be
Okay.
covered without having to go out for another proposal on that, but I'll check.
Okay,
Um,
and then based on those designs, there will be the
Yes.
request for, which type of request will it be for actually building the facility?
That will be, there's several different things. It could be construction manager risk. There are several other new terms that it could be, so we'll work with our architect, whichever architect that may be, to figure out the best path forward.
It's a pretty big project. They'll need to be well bonded and,
So,
yeah.
yeah, and so whatever architectural firm we use for architectural and engineering will be the project manager for that. So
Okay.
they will be responsible for writing whatever bid documents, evaluating those bids, making those recommendations to you, and kind of going forward from there,
So we've still got another couple of steps in
Yes.
council. Okay, cool. I'll hold the rest of my questions. All right, anything else to go on the next agenda? Heath, anything while you're out?
No? Just hold the fort down.
All right.
Keep on doing what y'all do.
Sure
Get
gonna
back
miss you,
before-
bud.
before it was still
Living the
being-
dream.
All right, hearing nothing, let's move on. The next item on the agenda is executive session, which we have none. Will not be reconvening in item J. That leaves us to item K. Is there any further business to discuss as a part of this meeting?
No?
Hearing none. The time is now 7:27. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all. That was a lot of protein in one meeting.
We're gonna miss you, bud. We're gonna miss you.
Well, I'm gonna miss y'all. I'll be
Heading up
back
to-
soon enough. South Texas this time.
Oh.